Hi, my name's Eric. Welcome back to my channel. Let's talk again about Taylor Swift. Since Folklore came out, I've been revisiting her past discography, and I have a pretty fresh memory of listening to Lover and Reputation in full, and I know I've listened to 1989 and Red as well, but my memory of those albums is a little bit less clear. But I realized that I never listened to her prior albums in full, I just heard the singles. So today I'm going to give her 2010 album Speak Now my first listen and break down the album's lyrics. Before I dive in, let me know in the comments down below what Taylor Swift album I should react to next. I would happily do another full reaction like this, or an in-depth lyrical breakdown like my Folklore video. Check the description box for a link to a list of nonprofits you can donate to. Please subscribe to be here when I post new videos every week, and hit the bell icon to be notified when my videos go live. I also just wanted to mention that biographical details aren't going to drive my analysis unless they spring to mind immediately. I'm not going to go and do research on her personal life, but I do know that a lot of Taylor's listeners are invested in connecting the dots between the stories in her music and in her real life. So if you'd like to contribute that perspective or any other interpretations of this music, I encourage you to do so in the comments. Without further ado, track number 1 is Mine.
You were in college working part-time, waiting tables. I was a flight risk with the fear of falling, wondering why we bother with love if it never lasts. The moment
I love how she builds a sense of excitement.
I can see it now. You remember we were sitting there by the water. You made a rebel of a careless man's careful daughter. You are the best thing that's ever been mine. You learn my secrets and you figure out why I'm guarded. You say we'll never make my parents' mistakes.
Okay, you're doing some unpacking.
We got nothing figured out.
Relatable.
You put your arm around me for the first time. You made a rebel of a careless man's careful daughter.
I remember when the song was all over country radio.
Fight till 30 a.m. You said everything was slipping right out of our hands. You said I'll never leave you. Every time I look at you, it's like the first time. I feel
She's so great with detail. That's like the best attribute of her writing. So as you probably could tell, that's a song that I know. I heard it on the radio and just everywhere back in the day, but I still remember it because of its attention to detail. That is just one of the best aspects of Taylor's writing. She has such a great eye for detail, and details that actually give us insights into how she's feeling and how these character dynamics are developing. But she's also always had a really great pop sensibility. I'd be very curious to hear how this would sound in a post-Red world, like if Max Martin or Jack Antonoff had gotten their hands on this track. And part of that pop, as in popular sensibility, is relating to someone who isn't an international superstar at 20 years old and writing a story about waiting tables and struggling to pay the bills. But that living on a prayer narrative is very much ingrained in her Romeo and Juliet, us against the world sensibility in how she talks about love in her music. And basically this song is Taylor describing her love for this person and unpacking some of her own hesitation. On the first verse, she says, I was a flight risk with the fear of falling, wondering why we bother with love if it never lasts. And we say, Taylor, you're barely 2 decades old and you're already so jaded. And so right. But she explains this on the chorus when she says, you made a rebel of a careless man's careful daughter, and later on the second verse when she says, you say we'll never make our parents' mistakes. Truly, the whole world is against them. Love doesn't last, parents pass their trauma onto their children, and that makes the triumph of this man fighting for her love on the bridge and chasing after her in the middle of the night even more gratifying. Track number 2 is Sparks Fly.
The way you move is like a falling rainstorm, and I'm a house of cards, and you stood there in front of me, just close enough to touch. Drop everything now, meet me in the pouring rain, 'cause I see sparks fly whenever you smile.
It's so wide-eyed and romantic. So another thing that Taylor is really good at is capturing this sort of teenage sense of excitement. When she says drop everything now and it leads up to the chorus, that's just such a great line because it so perfectly encapsulates what she's experiencing. She is letting it all go. She is opening herself up to this love. And then we get this release and this big wall of sound on the chorus that just perfectly encapsulates this thrill of new love. And lyrically, the song is this vibrant collage of images that tell us how taken she is with this person. But as with a great many songs about intense devotion or attraction, with that comes vulnerability. Taylor opens the song by saying, "The way you move is like a full-on rainstorm and I'm a house of cards." This guy's got the force of the elements and she can be blown over if he so much as sneezes. That's the magnitude of her attraction, but also it's, say it with me, a power imbalance. I talk about this all the time, but a really common way that pop singers signal us to impending doom, like a breakup, is by establishing the intensity of their love. Narratively, that sets up stakes, and it allows us later to enjoy the catharsis of experiencing secondhand this fall from the highest highs of this type of love to the lowest lows of heartbreak. I'm not saying that's necessarily what will happen soon, but there's a solid chance. And so just as this guy is a rainstorm on the chorus, Taylor associates embracing this love with kissing him in the pouring rain. And again, I'm just a pessimist, but she does sow some seeds of trouble on the second verse when she says that he's a bad idea, and later, "I'm on guard for the rest of the world, but with you, I know it's no good." So as far as a story or emotional arc goes, we've moved from these walls coming down to this creeping realization that opening yourself up to someone completely is a very vulnerable position. Track number 3 is Back to December, and I do know this song, so maybe I was right about the heartbreak thing.
I'm so glad you made time to see me. How's life? Tell me, how's your family? Your guard is up, and I know why.
The positions have flipped.
You gave me roses, and I left them there to die. So this is me swallowing my pride, standing in front of you, saying I'm sorry for that night. It turns out freedom ain't nothing but missing you, wishing I'd realized what I had in mind. I go back to December all the time.
It's interesting how wordy the chorus is, yet the rhythm is still so strong.
Then I think about summer, all the beautiful times. I watched you laughing from the passenger side. The cold came, the dark days when fear crept into my mind. So this is me swallowing my pride, standing in front of you, saying I'm sorry for that night. I go back to December all the time. Your text, your sweet smile, so good to me, so right. Maybe this is wishful thinking, probably mindless dreaming. I go back to December, turn around and make it
Just such a sad, lovelorn banger. It's so good. But this feels like a different place narratively. I don't think there's one through line in terms of story, but there's definitely a lot of intention in the way that this album is sequenced and what emotional beats it's hitting. Because as expected, a breakup has happened and Taylor has to pull herself out of this heartbreak. Here she's meeting up with her ex and immediately she asks about his family. And again, it's the importance of these details because that's basically shorthand to say that this relationship was serious. She met the parents, she knew the parents. But something significant has flipped. She says, "Your guard is up and I know why." On the first 2 tracks, she was the one with her guard up, but she explains this on the pre-chorus when she says, "You gave me roses and I left them there to die." The roses obviously are the symbol of their love, and she's the one who didn't water them. She didn't keep the love alive, so she's the heartbreaker. Track number 4 is the title track, Speak Now.
I am not the kind of girl who should be rudely barging in on a white veil occasion. I sneak in and see your friends, and her smile
That was fun. So, definitely between this song and the last, the title of the album starts to make a whole lot of sense, right? Mine involved opening up to the idea of expressing your love for someone else. Back to December was about owning up to your mistakes, and this song, somewhat ironically, is about knowing when not to speak. Taylor is at her ex's wedding and she daydreams about the rom com fantasy thing of when the officiant asks if anyone has any objections, actually objecting. And this really is the point where we move from the story in the song to the metatextual story. This album was significant to Taylor Swift, the real life artist, because she basically set out to prove herself by writing this whole album solo without any co writers. So the album, in that way, is her speaking up. But since these songs are so tied to her personal and public life, particularly where they bleed into each other, she can use these songs to claim power. This song isn't necessarily about a real life situation that she was in, but on a meta level, it allows her to perform a thing that she wishes she could do. It's fantasy wish fulfillment, and that's why it works emotionally. Track number 5 is Dear John. I wonder who that John might be.
Long were the nights when my days once revolved around you. And my mother accused me of losing my mind. You paint me a blue sky and go back and turn it to rain. Lived in your chess game, but you change the rules every day. The song is to let you know why.
Again, the song is doing the thing she wishes she could do IRL.
Don't you think I was too young to be messed with? Baby, it's you and your sick need to give love and take it away. And you'll add my name to your long list of traitors. Dear John, I see it all now that you're
Wow, that was impressive vocally and lyrically. There's so much passion. Like I mentioned earlier, intense devotion often leads to a power imbalance and to heartbreak, and that's exactly what's happened here. Taylor talks about her days revolving around this guy, no idea who it could be, and then she says, "You paint a blue sky, then go back and turn it to rain. And I lived in your chess game, but you changed the rules every day." Just like rain was a symbol of the intensity of her attraction on Sparks Fly, here it's turned sour. That same rain is now an image of her ex's negative influence over her. She feels like a pawn in this game. She's lost power to him. Part of that might be because, as she said, she was much younger than him, but in general, he manipulated her. Track number 6 is Mean, which is another song that I do know.
you with your words like knives and swords and weapons that you use against me. Then you with your voice like nails on a chalkboard, calling me out when I'm wounded. But you can take me down with just one single blow. Someday I'll be living in a big old city, and all you're ever gonna be is mean. Why you gotta be so mean? You have pointed out my flaws again, as if I don't already see them. Someday I'll be big enough so you can't hit me. Drunk and rumbling on about how I can't sing, but all you are is mean and a liar and pathetic and alone in life.
So vicious.
Yeah, someday I'll be big enough so you can't hit me. Why you gotta be so mean?
That song is so fun and it really takes me back. It would be cool if she switched up the structure of the songs a little bit more because, like, every song we get this quieter bridge leading up into half the chorus that's subdued, and then we get the big latter half of the chorus that repeats, and then, like, it would be cool to have a little bit more variety. Taylor began as this young, starry-eyed lover overcoming her pessimism, but then she was betrayed and acknowledged where her relationships went wrong on both sides. The next step in speaking up is to exert her power over someone who wronged her by exposing their cruelty and asserting her own value. She talks on the first verse about her critics' words being like weapons, and then on both verses about how basically these criticisms, which as she describes them often amount to lies and humiliation, are essentially punching down. Which, having looked at some of the journalism that this song may or may not allude to, and having seen that a lot of it, especially at the time, was very loaded with misogyny, seems pretty on point. So not the most complicated song, but a natural progression for Taylor's increasingly outspoken voice on this album. Track number 7 is The Story of Us. Okay. Again, meta, because she did talk about that. Definitely punchy and sarcastic like the last track. I was not expecting pop rock influence on this album, but that was so fun. In some ways, the song is like a mirror image of Back to December. She's run into this ex again, reflecting on what went wrong, and confronting the discomfort of seeing this person who she has so much history with, both good and bad. She calls back to Sparks Fly on the first verse when she says, "I used to think one day we'd tell the story of us, how we met, and the sparks flew instantly." And once again, on a meta level, she did tell this story earlier on the album. And she knew where it was going to go, which is why she gave us hints about her making the mistake of falling in love with a bad guy. What's interesting though is how she glazes over the negative details and just gives us the SparkNotes version on the first pre-chorus when she says, "A symbol complication, miscommunications lead to fallout." This is different from the microscopic details she gives us on the second verse of her like pulling at her clothing to distract herself from this awkwardness. And she reveals why on the second pre-chorus when she says, "I'm scared to see the ending, why are we pretending this is nothing?" So the vague lyrics are her performing this impulse to avoid concretely addressing what went wrong. Track number 8 is Never Grow Up.
Little hands wrapped around my finger and it's so quiet in the world tonight. To you, everything's funny. You got nothing to regret. Oh, darling, don't you ever grow up. Don't you ever grow up. Just stay this little. I won't let nobody hurt you. Won't let no one break your heart. Just try to never grow up. You're in the car on the way to the movies and you're mortified. Your mom's dropping you off. But don't make her drop you off around the block. Remember that she's getting older too. Oh, darling, don't you ever grow up. Don't you ever grow up. I just realized everything I have is someday gonna be gone.
Just got chills.
Here I just never grow up.
I think that's solid advice. So something that Taylor does here that we've seen on other albums like Mariah Carey's Butterfly is that after experiencing all of this relationship stress and reaching a breaking point, an artist in the story of their album will recede to a place of idealism, often one that's childlike. So she's looking at this baby and thinking, Honey, you've got a big storm coming. She has all these tender observations about the baby, like on the first verse when she says, your little eyelids flutter cause you're dreaming. And that image is a nice encapsulation of that state of innocence, right? Eyes closed, lost in a dream, ignorant to everything else. Track number 9 is Enchanted.
There I was again tonight, forcing laughter, faking smiles, same old tired, lonely place. All I can say is it was enchanting to meet you.
Wow.
Across the room, your silhouette starts to make its way to me, and it was enchanting to meet you. This night is sparkling, don't you let it go. Wondered if you knew I was enchanted to meet you.
Wow.
Lingering question kept me up to AM. Who do you love? This night is sparkling, don't you let it go. This is me praying. This was the very first page until I see you again. These are the words I held back. I was enchanted to meet you.
Yep, definitely an album highlight for me. Just such a great song. So the first half of the song is basically about Taylor falling in love with the idea of this guy. On the first verse, she talks about meeting him and says, your eyes whispered, have we met? Across the room, your silhouette starts to make its way to me. Taylor feels like this connection is bubbling under the surface, but she also suggests that it's one-sided. She's projecting these messages and feelings onto him. In particular, the image of his silhouette approaching her gives me the feeling of like his spirit, an anonymous avatar of the things about him that attract Taylor being the thing she's connecting with. It's an empty shell. It's not the actual guy, so she spends the rest of the song preoccupied about the fact that she didn't express this to him, he'll never know, and so nothing will come of it. If we're continuing with the idea of speaking up or conversely leaving things unsaid, this is a situation where her not saying anything leaves her with regret. Track 10 is Better Than Revenge.
I'll go stand in the corner and think about what you did.
The story starts when it was hot and it was summer, and I had it all. I had him right there where I wanted him. She took him faster than you could say sabotage. She underestimated just who she was stealing from. She's not the same, and she's not what you think. And she's better known for the things that she does on the mattress. She should keep in mind, there is nothing I would do better than revenge. I think her ever-present frown is a little troubling, and she thinks I'm psycho 'cause I like to rhyme her name with things. But I wouldn't teach you that in pencil, so it's up to me. But no amount of vintage dresses gives you dignity. She's an actress. I'm just another thing for you to realize that, honey. She took him faster than you could say sabotage.
Okay, so I've heard that Taylor has tried to distance herself from the song and that she doesn't really identify with it anymore, and I do understand why. It's pretty bitter. She's basically saying, you stole my man, watch your back. As Taylor often does, she uses childlike images in a sarcastic way. Here she compares stealing her boyfriend with taking her toys on the playground. The underlying feeling being condescension, like, you're immature and this is child's play. A more recent song that springs to mind would be Miss Americana from Lover, where Taylor uses the image of a high school to convey her detractors' immaturity. And this makes sense here when Taylor says that this person is unsophisticated and, again, childish. Track number 11 is Innocent.
I guess you really did it this time. Left yourself in your warpath. Wasn't it easier in your lunchbox days? Wasn't it beautiful when you believed in everything? It's alright, just wait and see. Your string of lights is still bad to me. Oh, you're still an innocent. Did some things you can't speak of.
Okay, so again, Taylor picks up on the childlike imagery of the last song to talk about someone who's wronged her. On the first pre-chorus, she appeals directly to this person saying, "Wasn't it easier in your lunchbox days, always a bigger bed to crawl into?" The implication being that this person no longer has that sense of comfort. And emotionally, this is actually a maturation from the last song because she's adopting this hurt people mentality. And this leads her on the chorus, of course, to say pretty generously, "You're still an innocent." And she makes reference to lights and to a tough crowd. So I get the feeling that her experiences as a public figure who already at this age had faced significant scrutiny informs the sense of empathy. Track number 12 is Haunted. Wow.
He will try to take away my pain, but the whole time I'm wishing it was you instead. Something keeps me holding on to nothing. Come on, you're not gone. You can't be gone. Never thought I'd see it.
Wow. Way more intense and dramatic than I was expecting, but super cool. So whereas on Back to December, Taylor expressed her regret for not holding on to this person, here she is making a last-ditch effort to maintain this relationship by speaking up. So the chorus is that sort of conversational declaration of her love that maybe will help her and her partner change course and avoid a conclusion like on Back to December. And on the second verse, she does something kind of taboo. She talks about her next boyfriend to her current boyfriend. She says he will try to take away my pain and he just might make me smile, but the whole time I'm wishing it was you instead. So she's tapping into this truth about relationships that typically is left unsaid. This is yet another speak now moment. She's getting wiser and bolder. Track number 13 is Last Kiss.
I still remember the look on your face, words you whispered, but just us to know. You told me you loved me, so why did you go away?
This is like the opposite of the opener, with her mentioning the exact time that this conversation happened.
I do recall now the smell of the rain, fresh on the pavement. I ran off the plane. Never thought we'd ever last kiss. Your name, forever the name on my lips. I do remember the swing of your step. It's not a day I don't miss those rude interruptions. So I watch you live in pictures like I used to watch you sleep. Ever the name on my lips.
What's interesting is that this is a breakup song that lyrically has all of the trappings of a love song. It's almost like a declaration of love that comes too late. She has all of these intimate details of wearing his clothes, remembering the exact time and date of their conversations, his quirks and mannerisms. It's like a laundry list of proof of her love. So just like on Haunted and Back to December, we return to this place of leaving things unsaid and letting them exist beneath the surface while still exerting the power of those secrets metatextually through these songs. The final track, track number 14, is Long Live.
I said, remember this moment in the back of my mind. We stood with our shaking hands. The crowds and stands went wild. Long live the walls we crashed through. All the kingdom lights shine just for me and you. We will be remembered. And the cynics were outraged, screaming, "This is absurd." In a band of thieves in ripped up jeans, got to run away. You'll stand by me forever, but if God forbid fate should step in,
And that is how the album ends. So on a lot of pop albums, we start out from a very general place, then zoom in, and then we end the album by zooming back out, but in a different direction that expands the themes of the album. This is what Taylor is doing here by introducing more of her feelings about her music career, and specifically by thanking the people who have propped her up instead of held her down. It's this triumphant moment. It sounds like she is on stage with her collaborators, sharing in their achievements. She talks about reaching a milestone with the passing of a decade, and it feels like she's announcing her transition into a new phase of her life and career. She has spoken out through her music, and this is what it's created. Both this album that we have experienced together and this career that she has built by opening up. Overall, I'm pleasantly surprised by this album. It was pretty sonically cohesive. It incorporated elements of pop rock and country and maybe even echoes of pop punk. There was a nice balance tonally and emotionally of wit and sarcasm with wistfulness and longing. And like I've mentioned, Taylor's detail-oriented approach to lyrics just works so well and really enhanced this album for me. So I'm very happy that after 10 years I finally got around to listening to this in full. And like I said, please let me know in the comments down below what other Taylor Swift albums I should react to and what other topics you'd like to see me cover on my channel. Check the description for that donation link. Please subscribe to be here when I post new videos every week. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you are staying safe and healthy, and until next time, that's it.